Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that's asked a lot early in the season. That is how to dewinterize your jet boat. Now today we're going to be doing this on a Yamaha jet boat, but this is going to be pretty similar for most other jet boat brands with a few slight twists. If you have questions about that specifically, if you've got a brand besides Yamaha, hit us in the comments below. We'll answer those questions for you. But let's jump into how to dewinterize your jet boat. The first thing we always talk about is fuel. Take your boat to the gas station, fill the gas tank up with 93 octane. And before you complain about 93 octane and that's expensive, the reason you want to do that, if you have any old fuel in the tank left over from last year that did not get properly treated, you want to put some high octane gas in there to bring the octane level up to where it's actually going to run and not cause issues. If you treated your gas in your winterization step with Sta-Bil or something like that, if you filled the gas tank all the way up, like we recommend in the winterization step, or that's 7/8 full, you don't need to do this step. Skip this step. But if you didn't, if you're not 100% sure, go ahead and top it off with super unleaded all the way to the tip top. That'll displace some of the moisture that's in the tank as well, and then we'll move right on to step 2. So for step 2, what we want to do is go around the boat and do an inspection for anywhere there's an opening like this here, drains, water discharge outlets. Just check to make sure there's no insects have made a nest inside those holes up around your fuel cap. This is your overflow there for your fuel. Big drain here on this big FSH here. Underneath, down here inside this exhaust area, you're going to have drains all back up around anywhere you see an opening. All on these jet pump areas here, drains. Go ahead and check those. While you're at it, go ahead and install your drain. This is another later step. We'll go ahead and do that while we're here. Anywhere that you see drain holes, see this little guy right up in here? Just check those, make sure there's no obstructions. More drains on this side here. This is a big one here. We see this a lot. You'll see insects making a nest up inside these little visibility spouts. We'll get a piece of wire. Right now I got a screw, but you can get a piece of wire, like a piece of coat hanger, feed that up inside. You'll notice a lot of dirt coming out sometimes. Check those holes there. Down along the front, you may find a couple more there and here. Just make sure all those are cleared out. No insects leaving those nests, dirt, debris, whatever's inside, so you can visually see when the water's flowing. And it's also not going to prevent the water from getting out. Step 3. It's a good idea to go ahead and cycle your cables, so both your steering cables as well as your throttle cables, forward and reverse. Just make sure you don't have any binding here. A lot of times sitting up over the winter time, if you have not cycled these cables every 30 days or so, especially if you saltwater boaters, these cables will get frozen up and they'll be kind of difficult to use. So go ahead and just check that right there at the house before you get ready to leave. If you have an E-Series boat that's got the electronic throttles, you're going to turn the engines on, cycle your throttles up and back. Even though it's an electronic throttle, it still uses cables to move those things around. So double check that. If you have issues with your cables and you're feeling that they're binding or it's tight, we're going to put you a link in the description below for a video to show you how to run some lubricant up into the cables. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. If the cables are relatively new, give that a shot. Try to run some of that lubrication after you watch that video into your cables. If you feel like it's not working out, then check out jetboatpilot.com. We've got replacement cables on the website. We'll put a link in the description below as well. And also too, there's a link to a nut, a special tool to remove that nut on the back of the transom there. It's really hard to get to. We sourced a special tool to help you get that nut off. For step 4, we're going to talk about cleanout plugs. So this is specific to Yamaha boats. You want to make sure you go ahead and install your cleanout plugs. If they've been stowed properly, they're going to look like this. After every use, you want to stow them like this. Don't leave them locked in place. Kind of out of the hole, laying sideways so they can stay dry, not absorb a lot of moisture. These gaskets around the perimeter here, if they're left in for long periods of time, they can absorb moisture and they get plump, they get fat. When they get fat, they won't install properly. So once you get them ready to install, just make sure that they're set. Place them back into the receptacle. You'll see a little notch there that tells you how to set it. Down and twist. Once they're in, twist and locked on this newer style or press down on the older style. Just give it a nice tug to make sure it's firmly in place. If the plug is serviceable, if that gasket is not swollen or out of spec, it should go in easily and remove easily. If these plugs are hard to install or if they are hard to remove, maybe it's time to rebuild those. We'll put a link in the description below for those parts. You can get them on jetboatpilot.com. It'll make your life so much easier when it comes time to install and to remove. But most importantly, if these parts are serviced properly and taken care of, it will eliminate any potential for these parts to blow out. If you've ever heard of someone's complain about these things blowing out, it's mainly because they were installed incorrectly. And the reason they get installed incorrectly is because those gaskets I talked about, they'll swell. It's hard to get them in place. People will think they got them locked, but they're just kind of wedged. And then under pressure, they'll blow. So super critical you get this part right. This is a great feature, and it should be used, and it should always remain serviceable just in case you ever hit a clog. This is instant access to the impellers. It'll save you a lot of headache if you ever have a clog, but just make sure that they're serviceable day one. All right, step 5, let's check our batteries. Find your battery compartment on your boat. Go ahead and get you a voltage meter out and check your voltage on both your house and your start battery. You want to make sure they're good and hot. If you don't already have it on there, leave it on a trickle charger at all times, even when the boat's not in use, even during the summertime, just leave it on a trickle charger. It's going to make sure the batteries are hot. You just don't want to go out that first time and try to go boating and the battery's dead. Also, these batteries, depending on climate, are usually good for 4 or 5 seasons, so bear that in mind. And you can find that the battery is a few years old and older than you thought it was, and get out of the water and you try to start and it's just not starting. So just go ahead and swap the battery out. Sometimes it's best to do that first of the season. Go ahead and have you a good hot battery. Full confidence all season long, it's gonna be good to go. All right, for step 6, you wanna run the engines on the hose using fresh water at least one good time per engine before you go to the boat ramp. So get your flush adapter out, get your water turned on. I'm gonna go ahead and start the port side engine. Connect to the quick disconnect. Make sure there's no kinks in your line. Super important. You don't want to think you got cooling water running, but it's actually not running. And one last check. We'll come over here on the side. Make sure we see water flowing out of your visibility spouts. That's a good way to tell that you don't have any insects in there and you've also got cooling water running. We'll let these engines run up to temperature, maybe 4 or 5 minutes a piece, and then we'll go to the water. For step 7, take your boat to the water. Go find your favorite lake, watering hole, drop the boat in the water, go for a run. You're gonna wanna run the boat for 30 minutes to an hour. Go ahead and burn off any of the residual fogging oil that might be in the air intake tract from where you fogged it over the winterization process. Just get the engine good and hot, run it hard. Before you take it out with the family that first trip of the summer, make sure that you've got everything kind of worked out, all the kinks are worked out. And once you've done that, then you can move on to step 8. Step 8, you're going to be changing your spark plugs. And we always recommend changing your spark plugs at the beginning of the season, not at the end of the season. The main reason for that is what we just said. You're burning off all that residual fogging oil. Just in case there was any issue with the spark plugs fouling, we know we got a good set of hot plugs in the boat for the entire season. Jet Boat Pilot carries those spark plugs. We'll put a link in the description below for you as well. And there's also something special. Jet Boat Pilot includes a special vial of whacker paste, which is a special treatment that you put on the threads to prevent that metal from seizing up on those aluminum threads inside the engine. So super important. Jet Boat Pilot's exclusive, by the way, on that whacker paste. It comes with all of our spark plugs. And finally, step 9, we're gonna say that if you haven't already done your engine oil change, now's the time to go ahead and change your oil. The manufacturer recommends anywhere from once every 100 hours or once per year on an oil change. So if you're not putting a ton of time on it, you definitely want to do the oil change once a year. Some will do that in the fall, others will do that in the spring, but if you haven't already done it in the fall, go ahead and do the oil change now. Well, that about wraps up our dewinterization video. Do you have any favorite steps that you'd like to do in your dewinterization process? Maybe we missed some of those. If you have those, comment below. We'd love to hear from you on that. We can certainly speak to that if some have questions about it. And we appreciate you watching this video. If you like this one, check this one out.